So, guys, this is a very tough video, but I was watching somebody, I think it's called Top 10 Wrestling yesterday, and he actually was talking about the downfall of Austin Aries. And I really wanted to say this, and this has been, and I know I did a video like this before, but actually, I've dealt with a lot of just hardship through my life, really. And there was a point, and I struggled with suicidal thoughts from the time that I was like maybe 8 years old all the way to 33 years old. Trigger warning for this video. And actually, Austin Aries actually did save me from suicide. I'll explain all this. When I was working, when I went to college, I really was happy there. Like, I had a lot of potential. I was working really hard. I also just, felt like I could be myself. And it was also good because I spent time away from my family. And I was able to develop my own person and my own character, really. So when I came back home, I remember, my parents were really cool with me for 1 or 2 weeks, and it was like, berating me for not finding a job. I was very book smart, but I wasn't street smart. So I remember, one day my dad flipped out at me for not being able to find a job. Or I remember like one time, I was trying to be a tutor, and my dad encouraged me. He had to help me get dressed, and then he flipped out at me for applying for the job afterwards because he was like, you should have known not to apply for that. So it felt weird that he encouraged me. He said that I should apply, and then he contradicted himself. And then I used to work at a job called Conway, and I dealt with a lot of workplace bullying there. And I was also very naive, and I dealt with my parents being very verbally abusive and emotionally abusive growing up. So when I had bosses scream at me, yell at me, or if I did a great job and they said, "Oh, well, you work too slow," and just curse at me, I felt that that was normal because actually my parents would do that. Or I've had my boss yell and scream in my face or yell at me and shout at me and say things like, if you ever ask for a vacation, I'll terminate you. Again, there's a lot of people in their younger 20s who may respond to jobs with workplace bullying with just, going with the flow, really, because they don't have a lot of life experience. So what happened was, graduated in May. Then I went through this, from May to December. The job was robbed by some security guards, and this was all in 2011, I believe. No, 2010. So the store's robbed by some security guards. The Hampton Police Department aimed guns at me. They were winking and grinning. My boss actually made fun of how I was almost murdered and shot dead by the police, and then also my parents told me it's a reason to get a better job. You survived. Move on, get a better job. And I actually was shell shocked and traumatized. Like, you ever watched The Deer Hunter? You saw like Christopher Walken's character and how traumatized that he was. So this is a little bit personal. I got involved with an ex girlfriend. We were together in high school. We got together after that happened because I wanted to feel loved and connected. But my dad said, she's just no good news. She clearly comes from a lot of just problems. He said that to me in high school. Then 6 or 7 months later, I found out why he said that. I can't go into detail with that, but it did turn into something where it was a situation where we had to sign, where my parents got a lawyer and things were signed to say that she could not contact me, I could not contact her, and sometimes when we went to court together, me and my ex girlfriend, she would say things to the judge like I'm autistic, like make fun of my mental health issues, and just try to embarrass me or sometimes no show. So my parents would have to pay a big bill because when you go to court and you deal with lawsuits or restraining orders or and we should not be contacting each other anymore type of things. Obviously the other side doesn't show, and they don't have a lawyer, but you have a lawyer. They just the lawyer pays for every single time, even if the other person doesn't show up, really. But it turned to a bunch of crazy situations, and I felt really, really depressed, really. And I also was hurting a little bit because me and my girlfriend, um, we both had a very consensual relationship, and we both had a very physical relationship. It was always consensual. So I remember my dad also saying, the reason why I got back with your girlfriend is because you were thinking with your dick. I remember one time my grandmother died, and he was saying things like, since you since you would, go to, Clinton, Connecticut, because you are thinking with your dick because you want to see your girlfriend, you can afford to, get a cab and see your grandmother in hospice. You think with your dick, you think with your dick, and other things like that. Like obviously, my parents were very harsh, but obviously that's not what we say to our children. Another personal story is that in high school, me and my girlfriend would do phone sex. We got caught. I remember her mother saying something like I was forcing her to do it, and no, it was consensual. And my dad was saying things like, you care about your coming, you care about your dick, and you stop thinking with your dick, and just other things like that. Really, you don't talk to a kid that way. But I was dealing with a lot of depression. And thinking of suicide, just because of the emotional abuse I got from my parents, and also staying at a job with workplace bullying and violence, and also sabotage. Like, I was expected to work 2 hours a day and clean the whole store. And then they promoted me to do other jobs, but the other jobs I was supposed to run the linen section, but my boss actually pulled me away to take care of everybody's section, and then be like, okay, you're not doing your work really. You take care of it. Your section's dirty, but everybody else's section is clean, and then overlook how he kind of pulled me away, really. And he would just take advantage of me because he thought that I was mentally ill. And my father had a mentality of just saying, okay, you know what, you just think with your dick, and saying, even though you're almost shot dead, you just, he didn't really care about my emotions or trauma, really. So I remember liking TNA wrestling a lot. And I really liked Austin Aries because, he represented to me that metaphor of an X Division wrestler, which is somebody who worked very, very hard, and somebody who worked very, very hard, and somebody who you would never thought would ever be a TNA champion, because obviously Hogan and Bischoff and a lot of other people buried the X Division. That was also when Abyss became the X Division champion. So they did a lot of and they changed it to the Extreme Division. Abyss did. But the point of it is that you wouldn't think a person like Austin Aries would ever be the TNA champion, because they always buried wrestlers. They always focused on WCW people. So when he became, that Destination X show, that's one of the best shows that they had. Jack Evans. No, I know it was like a year before. Like the year before, they had like Jack Evans, I think Tony Anthony Nese, and they also had Zima Ion. Like they really showcased these really underdog wrestlers, and that was one of the appeals of the X Division. You saw these underdog wrestlers, even AJ Styles. When he started, and then he became a champion. Like this was a great, introduction into TNA, and just seeing these people grow throughout the years, and that's one of the reasons why. The X Division was so important. That was its purpose, was just to take cruiserweight wrestlers and pick the ones that could have a lot of potential and move them towards the main event, really. And that was Austin Aries, But definitely seeing him be a champion for 300 days, and him face Robert Roode, a person that would always cheat to win, really, and then have him win. And honestly, it wasn't. He wasn't really supposed to win, because the match of the year was the match that they were supposed to have was James Storm versus Bobby Roode at Bound for Glory, for the TNA Championship. That was supposed to be the big money match, but they chose to change it for two reasons. Number one, Hogan was for Austin Aries, and then the other thing was they wanted to subvert expectations, really. And then also, it's just the other thing too, that you get Austin Aries as the TNA champion versus Jeff Hardy, and we all know that if you have Jeff Hardy on a pay per view, that draws money. If you have James Storm, Robert Roode, you know how it is with TNA wrestling. They would not have a match like that main event a show, because they would feel like, okay, there has to be WWE or WCW or ECW person to sell it out, really. But I did feel that when Austin Aries won, and that night I was thinking about taking my life, really. It meant a lot to me, because I was like saying, you know what, it represented, who I was as a person, an underdog, somebody who's gone through a lot of hell, somebody who has a lot of potential, really, and no, not a lot of other people see it. Not my family, not my boss at my job, and just being successful, really. So it really said to me that there is a place for underdogs, and that really saved my life. Really, it made me feel like, okay, if I kept on living and I kept on grinding and going, really, I would eventually find that same type of path, really. But I came really, really close to suicide. I had a bunch of antidepressants. I had a belt to put around my neck and really take my life after the show, really. But I really was, but it really saved me, really. And I always wanted to tell Austin Aries this, but the problem is, and I know this is very true, that he's known for drama and controversy. So I really think that if I ever told him in person or if he ever saw this video, he would respond exactly like MJF, really, and just try to use it as a moment to be an asshole instead of just saying, wow, he really inspired somebody, through the best part of his career to actually keep on living and keep on going, really. So, you never know how inspiring you are, really. And I really just hope that if he wants to continue professional wrestling, that he really just has composure and conducts himself in a good way. And it's also a thing about what I've said about AEW. Like, really, there's no. It's just featuring wrestlers and going through the motions, really. But when you have something like the X Division, and that's kind of what the X Division really was about wrestlers being in that division and then maybe going to the main roster and actually developing themselves and becoming bigger deals. That needs to happen in wrestling. That's so inspiring. Why do you think NXT sells out? Because it's not just about these wrestlers just being featured. It's about, who goes to the main roster and who actually becomes bigger deals, really. So yeah, that story with Austin Aries had really inspired me. So I thank him still, but I also will say that you never know how inspiring you are, really. Things have gotten better over the years. I've also learned that even though it took me until 8 or 9 years I worked at another job, then I got a job after that, really, like a hospital job I had for 3 years. I've been traveling. I've done amazing things, really. Like, that's when my life has gotten good the last like 3 or 4 years. But I would kind of say too that I've learned a lot about accountability, maturity, how to respond to traumatic events, and then also that sometimes you can get therapy. You can have family and they don't know how to help you, or maybe their help is to hurt your feelings. And just like that Full Metal Jacket, just really hurt your feelings, and really just see it as, what, you're an idiot, or you got back to somebody not because you wanted to feel love or connected or a family, like I did. You cared about poontang and other things like that. So I'm happy that I've learned to kind of like deal with the challenges in my life and actually live a good one. But definitely at my lowest point, Austin Aries and TNA Wrestling, they really inspired me to keep on going and keep on living, really. So I always thank Austin Aries for that, and I'm happy to do this video because it's really important to me.